Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Everyone together. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam deving saraswating vyasam tato jayamudiraye nashta prayeshva vadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya. Bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. We're reading from Srimad-Bhagavatam. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Canto 8, Chapter 13, Description of Future Manus. And in this chapter we're getting lots of names. Lists of names. Today is, I've been told, also the day of Bhishma Dev's appearance, Bhishmashtami, yes, Bhishmashtami. So we'll speak something about Bhishma Dev. And in the presence of all of you exalted Vaishnavas, I want to beg your blessings that I can say something relevant, appropriate, and in some way enlivening. And also, I request your participation. I was thinking it will be nice to hear from you. I don't know if we have a second microphone, but about your appreciation of Bhishma Dev. So you can be thinking about this. What is it that I especially appreciate about Bhishma Dev? Do we have a second microphone? Good, okay. I think I'm going to jump to the verse that we have written on the board, which is verse number 11. This is verses 1 through 10 without purports, and then we have verse number 11. So this is Shukadeva Goswami speaking, and he says, aṣṭame ntara āyāte. Aṣṭame ntara āyāte. Sāvarṇir bhavitā Manu. Sāvarṇir bhavitā Manu. Nirmoka-virajaskādyāḥ. Nirmoka-virajaskādyāḥ. Sāvarṇi-tanayā nṛpa. Sāvarṇi-tanayā nṛpa. Aṣṭame, the eighth. Antare, Manu's period. Āyāte, when arrived. Sāvarṇi, sāvarṇi. Bhavitā, will become. Manu, the eighth Manu. Nirmoka, nirmoka. Virajaska-ādyāḥ. Virajaska and others. Sāvarṇi, of sāvarṇi. Tanayāḥ, the sons. Nṛpa, O King. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation, O King, when the period of the 8th Manu arrives, sāvarṇi will become the Manu. Who will become the Manu? Sāvarṇi. Nirmoka and Virajaska will be among his sons. Nirmoka and Virajaska. Purport. The present reign is that of Vaivasvata Manu. According to astronomical calculations, we are now in the 28th yuga of Vaivasvata Manu. Each Manu lives for 71 yugas, and 14 such Manus rule in one day of Lord Brahma. We are now in the period of Vaivasvata Manu, the 7th Manu, and the 8th Manu will come into existence after many millions of years. But Shukadeva Goswami, having heard from authorities, foretells that the 8th Manu will be sāvarṇi, and that Nirmoka and Virajaska will be among his sons. Shastra can foretell what will happen millions and millions of years in the future. And so ends Srila Prabhupada's purport to the verse. And the chapter continues, referring to the second set of 7 Manus. One way of understanding the structure of a major portion of the Bhagavatam, starting with Canto 4 and going through Canto 9, is a day in the life of Lord Brahma. So if someone were writing a book about you, a day in your life, maybe not so many people would be eager to read. It might not be a bestseller. But then again, who knows? The Bhagavatam is telling a day in the life. We might want to say a typical day in the life of Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is generally somewhat in the background of these cantos, but of course he's very prominent in Canto 2 and somewhat also in Canto 3. And then he kind of recedes to the background, and we hear about the Manus. And as we're hearing about the Manus, in a way they're just marking time, and then we get descriptions of the Bhagavatas, because this is, after all, the Bhagavata Purana. And so, when we come to a chapter like this, where we get a lot of names, what are we getting? It's a kind of interlude. In one sense, it's the story of the day in the life of Brahma, but in a deeper level, it's an interlude in the real story. Because what is the real story? The real story is about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotees. The Srimad-Bhagavatam, the Bhagavata Purana. But we may wonder, when we read some of these names, what is the point? what do we know about so many of these names that we hear? Perhaps we don't know anything at all. And so I'm reminded of what Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote in his famous essay, one of the first of his writings, which is a speech called The Bhagavata. It's philosophy, ethics, and theology. And he is, in this article, in this speech, he is urging his audience to take the Bhagavatam seriously. He's speaking to the so-called Bhadralok, the sort of modern educated, cultured people of Bengal, who are thinking that the Bhagavatam, this is nothing valuable for us, we have moved on, and so on. So he's arguing for the importance of the Bhagavatam. And he says something a little bit almost shocking. One point he makes, he says, in a sort of polemic spirit, you may say, he says, if all of the Vedic literature, except the Srimad-Bhagavatam, would be burned to ashes, like the Library of Alexandria. Have you heard of the Library of Alexandria? It was burned to ashes. He said if all the Vedic literature except the Bhagavatam would be burned to ashes, there would be no loss. Because we have the Srimad-Bhagavatam. But he explains the Bhagavatam is bringing together the essential substance of the Vedas, and in doing so, it is summarizing. I suppose someone someday is going to take it upon him or herself to go through all the names that are there in the Bhagavatam and compile a book with more details about these personalities from other Puranas and the epics and the Samhitas. But in the meantime, all we may be able to say is, indeed, the Bhagavatam is giving us the whole story, because the whole story is not just one day in the life of Brahma, but the ongoing story of the devotees of the Lord and how they interact with the Lord. And of course, one of the wonderful celebrations in the Bhagavatam of such great devotee is that of Bhishma Deva. Bhishma Deva is Bhishma. The word Bhishma is an exclamation. If you want to express a kind of sense of being amazed and shocked and at the same time joyful in Sanskrit language, what do you say? Bhishma. Bhishma, because this is what the Devas exclaimed when they heard Bhishma Dev, Devavrata, proclaim his vrata, his famous vrata, his vow, such that his father, Shantanu, his father's desire to marry Satyavati could be fulfilled. The vow, of course, was that Bhishma would remain brahmachari for life. So Bhishma Dev is a big hero for the brahmachari ashram. And this is, we can say, an extraordinary moment in the life of Bhishma, which is a life which is full of extraordinary moments, starting with his birth. His birth is extraordinary, and certainly his departure from the world is extraordinary, and his life is extraordinary in his dealings with the members of the Yadu dynasty and the Kuru dynasty and the Pandavas. He is often referred to as grandfather, although he's not a grandfather. He's not a father, so how can he be a grandfather? But he is regarded as grandfather. Why? Because, in a sense, he adopted the Pandavas when they were very young. Their father had died, Pandu had died, and so he took them under his wing. Going back to his birth, one thing strikes me in thinking about the fact that his mother is Ganga Devi, and that is that previous to the chapter in first canto, which is describing Bhishma Dev, chapter 9, we have chapter 8, in which are the prayers of Kunti Devi. And one of those prayers, in which she is praying to Lord Krishna, who is present before her and who remains silent throughout her offering of prayers, and who remains silent at the end, at the conclusion of her prayers. He also remains silent. What does he do? He simply smiles mildly. Krishna will also be present. He will also be present with Bhishma, as Bhishma is performing, we can say, his pastime of departing the world. And in a similar way, Lord Krishna will be silent throughout that meeting, completely silent, because the first canto is about Krishna departing. It is about the sense of separation from Krishna. It is the anticipation of the 10th canto, in which Krishna departs. It's an anticipation of the 11th canto. It's a recognition that Krishna departs, and therefore what can we do? We must take shelter of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is the literary form of the Lord. In this age of Kali, there is this sense of time. The time has come. We must now listen to the Bhagavatam if we want to have the Lord's presence. Kunti Devi is in the presence of Krishna, and in his presence she prays to him that will let my attraction, my ratim, be for you only. Let it flow. Udvahatam, let it flow. How? Just as the Ganga flows. Ganga iva, Gange iva, Gange vogam, Ganga iva ugam. Let my attraction to you flow as the Ganga flows to the sea. So I was thinking, the flow of the Ganga, out of the flow of the Ganga appears Bhishma Deva. And Bhishma, at the end of his life, is flowing with instructions to the Pandavas. They're all coming to hear from Bhishma what in the Bhagavatam is very much summarized, but which in the Mahabharata is very much elaborated in the Shanti Parvan. the extensive instructions of Bhishma. Just a few days ago, we had good fortune of visiting Kurukshetra, and there is a temple there in the place which is said to be the place where Bhishma Dev departs the world. And there is a kind of diorama. I guess it's supposed to be an altar, but it's behind glass, so it's more like a diorama of Bhishma Dev lying on the bed of arrows, and the arrows are all there. He's like a pin cushion of arrows, and on top of each arrow there was a flower offered, and all the Pandavas are there, and Bhishma is lying there, and he's wearing chapals. He's lying down, but he's wearing shoes, which I thought that's interesting. Couldn't they at least take off his shoes in that condition? But no, he's a fighter, and his instructions are flowing like the Ganga, we may say, and the Pandavas are hearing those instructions. But I couldn't help but also remember, if we step back to an earlier time in the life of Bhishma Deva, a moment of what seems like a kind of embarrassment on the part of Bhishma Deva. It is the gambling match. And as we know what happens, Yudhishthir, in a fever, in a gambling fever, seems to lose all reason. And in his frantic state, what does he do? He gambles away his entire kingdom to Shakuni, to the Kauravas. And not only that, he gambles away his own brothers. He gambles away himself. He gambles away Draupadi, and they drag Draupadi into the arena. And Draupadi says amazing things. She challenges. She says, how is it possible that my husband, who has already gambled himself, who has already become slave, how is it possible for him to be an owner? How is it possible for him to claim ownership to be able to gamble myself? And what does Bhishma? All the elders are there, and they are all silent. And what does Bhishma Dev say? It is very difficult to understand Dharma. Well, if you think about it, it didn't really have to be that difficult. But why was it difficult for him? Although his entire life has been a flow of care, caring for the Pandavas, caring for those in his shelter, suddenly there's a problem. He has another principle he feels he needs to honor, and that is loyalty. He feels he has to somehow be loyal to those who have sheltered him. And so he is silent. It's a rather odd moment in many respects. I see it also as odd because Draupadi does not, although she challenges this whole situation, she does not challenge the idea that someone can be a slave of someone else. She does not challenge that. Or does she? Perhaps in a deeper sense, by her questioning of Bhishma, in fact, she's actually challenging that possibility that one person can own another and therefore gamble that person into slavery. A very a very interesting passage in the life, or moment in the life of Bhishma. But then he comes to the end of his life after so many events, and now there's this flow of devotion, this flow of knowledge. But what I wanted to say is that the culmination, what is the culmination of his flow of knowledge about Dharma? It is the flow of devotion for Krishna. It's his utterly unrestrained devotion for the Lord. And that is the powerful message that the Bhagavatam is giving. The Bhagavatam is giving a purport to the Mahabharata in many ways. And it's like an extended purport. And it's saying, these Pandavas and Bhishma and so many others who were so involved in so much politics in this situation of the Mahabharata, who are they really? What is their real identity? And so Bhishma is revealing his real identity as that of devotee of the Lord. But again, the Lord is silent. He is present and he is silent. So there's something mysterious about this. I'll just read one prayer of Bhishma Dev. This is the beginning of his prayers. Iti matir upakalpita vitrishna bhagavati satvata pungave vibhumni svasukam upagate kvachit vihartum prakritim upeyushi yat bhava pravaha. Bhishma Deva said, "Let me now invest my thinking, feeling, and willing, which were so long engaged in different subjects and occupational duties, in the all-powerful Lord Sri Krishna. He is always self-satisfied, but sometimes, being the leader of the devotees, he enjoys transcendental pleasure by transcending, by descending on the material world, although from him only the material world is created." So he's being descriptive of the qualities and qualifications of Krishna, but at the same time he's thanking him. You appear in this world. How kind you are. And you appeared to me. Not only that, you came and you fought with me. How wonderful. So in this sense of wonder, his love for Krishna is flowing. And that sense of flowing devotion is an invitation to us, that we may also follow in Bhishma's footsteps in the sense of developing, cultivating a sense of devotion to the Lord which flows, which is non-stop. That is wanted. So I'll stop there, but I do want to hear from you what you appreciate about Bhishma Dev for a few minutes, if we can. If anyone would like to share something, some particular quality, particular moment in his life, yes, Maharaj.
1978, when I first came here, and Siddhanta Das, he was doing a program with the bank in Delhi to cooperate, and it was a all India competition, art competition on Rama and Krishna, modern art. In 1978, it was very fresh. So number 2 was painting of Krishna.
Ah.
And it was big painting, like a little meter and a half. They were over meter by meter. It was a
Oh. I never saw that. Did everyone hear? No. Hanumat Preshika Swami is explaining that, or telling about a painting of Bhishmadev that was done by Bhaktisiddhanta. Oh, he sponsored the competition. Someone else painted. So it was a close-up of Bhishmadeva looking very, we would say in English, gnarly, with many like creases and wrinkles, like an ancient, timeless, wise man. But he said if you look closely, in each of the wrinkles there was a pastime, illustration of some pastime involving Bhishmadev. And that painting, this was a competition, it won second prize? Second place, yeah. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Yes, microphone. Back here.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for the deep insight. I want to analyze Bhishmadev on this, the concept of the situation ethics. He exposed the idea of situation
Ethics. Okay.
So especially the aspect of science, situation designs what to say at the particular time. I appreciate that view.
I missed something. You're asking me to? Yeah.
So, his view, the Bhagavatam of Bhishmadev as one of the Mahadev, it exposed situation ethics. His view is in collaboration with situation ethics. That sometimes there is setting constraint. Whatever we do at that time, let's live on for that particular constraint.
Oh. You're saying this is part of his instruction when he was speaking on Dharma?
Yes.
Okay. That's nice. I wasn't remembering that particular. He's saying that Bhishmadev, one of the instructions he gives on Dharma is that it's very much a matter of time, place, and circumstance, right? And indeed, that is, you could say, a kind of key idea in we can say, Vedic ethics. Sometimes modern scholars will say, Indian or Hindu, so-called Hinduism, there's no systematic elaboration or analysis of ethics, as is you find philosophical analysis of ethics in Western philosophy in quite developed way. But there is ethics. There's so much ethics. Take especially the Shanti Parvan, but also the entire literature, especially in the form of narrative. And this is responding to this point that ethics is very much a matter of time, place, circumstance, desha, kala, patra. When there's narrative, you are looking at the particular situation and the particular persons involved and the time. The question, though, becomes, in what way can one generalize from the particular? And that's a big subject. The Bhagavatam makes it very simple in a way. It says, Savai Pungsang Paro Dharma. The highest Dharma is that by which Savai Pungsang Paro Dharma Yato Bhakti Radhokshajeya Haituki Apratiyata Yayatma Suprasidati. The self, the Atma, is completely satisfied, not just prasidati, but suprasidati. completely satisfied, by serving the Lord, by engaging in service to the Lord, which is without interruption and which is without hetu, without motivation. So it's all there in that one statement, you can say. But then again, all right, so then what? What does that mean? And we have the whole elaboration of bhakti literature, the Bhagavatam being the center of that literature. But Bhishma Dev, in the Mahabharata, he's giving essentially Smriti Shastra in Shanti Parvan. He's giving all details about the Varnas and the Ashramas. And what the Bhagavatam says about that is, he then spoke on all of this. It's all in about 1 or 2 verses, or 3, that Bhishma Dev, he spoke on all different situations of all the Varnas and all the ashramas, and then that's it. And then he begins his prayers to Krishna, from which we understand what is ethics? Ethics is take shelter of the Lord and serve the Lord and be dependent on the Lord. Yeah. Something else? Yes, lady in the back. Microphone. Hare Krishna.
As you just said about dependence on God, I was just thinking that Krishna Dev's life, in a sense, gives us a glimpse of what it is like to always surrender to the Lord. That despite being so qualified at such a level, nothing ever went his way or to his liking in that sense. His entire life was full of sacrifice and just working for the benefit of the kingdom and everybody else.
Yeah.
But he stayed so surrendered and aligned to the Lord's will, so much so that his worship of the Lord, his love of his life, even required him to be against war. And he was even willing to go to that level.
Thank you. Yes, very nice. Thank you. Maybe one other? Yes, Panchagoda Prabhu. Microphone. Forward to Panchagoda. Hare Krishna.
Krishna is Mahajan,
Ah, yes.
and it appears that it was a mistake not to say anything about Draupadi, the aggression towards Draupadi and citing. How is it that pure devotee to make such mistakes?
Mistakes of the devotees? Well, we have a sort of simple out. You know, we always have an escape hatch for these questions. It's all Leela. Right? If Bhishma had spoken up, then, we would not have had the situation that came about, that the Pandavas would again gamble and would then be banished to the forest, etc., etc. It's hypothetical. What if we ask this question? But the general idea, the general question of fault in the part of the devotee. Well, one way to approach this would be Krishna's statement in the Gita, sahajam karma kaunteya sadosham api na tyajet sarvaramba hidoshena dhumen agnir ivavrita. Every action is accompanied or brings about some fault. Krishna is explaining in the 18th chapter. There will be fault in the observance of your duty. Sarvaram, but sahajam karma kaunteya sadosham api na tyajet. Do not, you may not therefore give up your duty. You may not give up your duty on the plea that if I do this duty, there will be a fault. So we can say that Bhishma is an example of that, following that principle. He would not give up his duty, in this case, of, without speaking, he was keeping on the side of the Kauravas, which in a sense he had to do by his obligation to them. That's maybe one approach, but we may get a more learned and deeper understanding from our Radharaman Maharaj. Microphone? Yeah? Something? Yeah. Yeah.
And due to that, my consciousness, my blood, my existence was polluted. So I could not
think clearly.
However, we know that part of the walk we took, one is because Satyavati, she was scared that if her son-in-law daughter, son should be thrown, she had, ambition that that child of her daughter should be enthroned.
was sitting on the throne.
And he had taken a vow whomsoever. He said, I will favor him.
Oh,
I will work in his interest.
Hare Krishna. Yeah.
Because another will show that after gambling, Dhritarashtra and Gandhari, they told that this is unjust, and all the Pandavas were released, even Draupadi was also.
Mm.
So Dhritarashtra and Gandhari, they told that it's unjust, whatever they have done, is completely, whatever the Vishnu Maharaj has completely now, and everything was disturbed. So Dhritarashtra would like personification of bird person. He told the religious principle that Vishnu Maharaj would have not done this, even he had done it. She they could not drag her in the assembly. Another thing, and this people also realized at last time, my dear child, because I was eating the food supplied by Duryodhana, so my consciousness was absolutely polluted, and I did not think about what is wrong and what is right.
So, from that first point, in one sense, we can say Bhishma is making a little confession. He's saying, yes, I was at fault. And here's the reason why I was at fault. Because I couldn't think clearly. Because of taking the grains, right, from Duryodhana. Huh? Yeah, sahajam karma gunte. Okay, thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna. So I think we'll end there. Oh, okay.
Also, one important lesson we can learn by the is that Vishnu is enduring such extreme pain, not being pierced by one arrow, but by thousands and thousands and thousands of arrows,
Hmm.
and being able to endure this great pain and still keeping his full concentration on Lord Krishna
Hmm.
is an example for all of us, because at one day death is going to approach all of us, and it's not always a pleasant experience to leave your body, and so during that period of time, many times our consciousnesses can be diverted from our focus on Krishna. So we take Vishnu as an example and try to always fully concentrate on Krishna, even during the most severe pain and suffering.
Hmm. Yes, good point. Thank you very much. Do we have time for another point? Okay. Back here.
Just, I want to ask Krishna Maharaj,
Mm.
what was the 8 vasus?
Oh,
Where he's remaining now, Krishna there. He's among these 8 vasus, or he left the spiritual world and he has nothing to do with the material world.
where is he now?
So he did not just leave us and go to the spiritual world. Where he is.
If I knew,
What way around?
if I knew where he is now, I might have hope of meeting him. Radharaman Maharaj, you must know this. The question is, where is Bhishma Dev now?
Mahabharata describes that one of 8 vasus,
Yeah.
he was
The youngest.
Bhagavan describes that there are 8 vasus. It is a type of demigod.
Yeah.
Vishnu was the greatest one. His name is Dew. So he gets like Dew.
Dew.
Somehow the one day Dew, he was traveling in the space, and they come across the ashram of Vasishtha. And Vasishtha is a very nice cow. Cow was very calm, very nandini.
This.
And also they could understand that simply by drinking the milk of this cow for complete 10,000 years, body will be completely free from any disease, healthy. So the wife insisted, "Dew, why not take this cow? It will be the first. I will drink the milk." So Dew, this Vitano, this is saintly person, property, how I can drink. But she insisted, "No, you have to do for me." And this Vitano took help from 7 other brothers, and together 8. They did steal the cow. This Vitano was the main culprit. But when they were on the way to the heavenly planet, the sister came and figured out something amiss after the cow was in meditation with the whole body. He searched and they found out that they are on the way. So this is a stall in front of body. So Krishna came in front of the cow. Immediately they could understand all that the seriousness of the system in business. All 7 brothers said, "How blood on the feet of the system." And then this Pitam. So first he calls it. "You are demigod, you are doing stealing business, you don't deserve to remain in heaven. You go, you have to take birth on complete planet, all 8. 7 they grab the feet of Vasishtha, but this Pitama, so they were since he did not bow down. So again they were, because they were crying. So Vasishtha said, "Okay, since the words have leaked out from my lips, so certainly you have to take birth from the planet. But very much, since right after birth, you will come back. But Vishnu Pitama, Dew, you have to remain longer. And also after that, you will return, you will become the Vasu." The Vishnu Pitama now, after quitting the body, so he is also spiritual, but no doubt, associate of Krishna in Leela. But apparently he was one of the 8 Vasu, top one. After quitting the body, he returned to the heavenly planet and resumed his post and chief of the Vasu, first Vasu.
Okay. You got that? That's the detailed explanation. There we got it. Okay, thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad-Bhagavatam ki, Gaur Premanande.